In June 2024, a judge at the Nunavut Justice Center sentenced a Toronto woman named Karima Manji to 3 years in federal prison for faking an Inuit identity. Manji forged enrollment documents from Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated to claim her twin daughters were Inuit. By checking that box, she secured over $150,000 in university scholarships and grants, legally reserved for Indigenous students. This ruling marked the first time the Canadian legal system utilized a prison sentence to address Indigenous identity fraud. A long-running academic debate about identity had reached a tipping point. The court established that stealing an Indigenous identity is a criminal act with identifiable victims. The Manji case is a visible break in a much larger systemic crisis. Individuals who publicly claim a false Indigenous identity for personal gain are often called Pretendians. The practice dates back nearly a century. In the 1930s, a British man named Archibald Bellany renamed himself Grey Owl and convinced the public he was Apache, building a career as an Indigenous author and conservationist. Today, similar deceptions are surfacing in modern institutions. Investigative journalists and Indigenous researchers have exposed high-profile figures claiming Indigenous heritage to advance in literature, healthcare, and academia. These individuals exploited a specific institutional vulnerability, the self-identification policy. For years, many organizations used an honor system, a checkbox on an application, to remove barriers for Indigenous applicants. While intended to support reconciliation, this unverified system provided a clear path for opportunists to claim resources they were never entitled to. By analyzing these cases, researchers have identified a specific set of tactics used to manufacture an Indigenous identity, the Pretendian playbook. One primary tactic is claiming a distant, unverified ancestor from centuries ago to assert Indigenous identity without living community connections. If questioned, fraudsters cite vague family trauma. They also practice elder grooming, building relationships with Indigenous leaders to use as an authenticity shield. Once established, these individuals often become gatekeepers. They sit on hiring boards and direct research funding, actively blocking legitimate Indigenous professionals from the same spaces. These calculated moves create a barrier that physically excludes Indigenous people from resources designed specifically for them. Indigenous scholars describe this as identity colonialism. It represents a shift from the historical theft of land to the modern theft of lived experience. The financial impact is immediate. Fraudsters drain finite grants and scholarships intended to address the economic marginalization of Indigenous communities. This chart shows the impact on institutional knowledge. When fraudsters produce what is known as red face research, their fabricated perspectives infiltrate and skew demographic data, often passing off stereotypes as authentic Indigenous research. The damage is also personal. When a trusted professor fakes their Indigenous identity, it causes profound betrayal and humiliates their elder mentors. This deception creates a cycle of mistrust. False claims overwrite the actual experiences of Indigenous communities, using their history as a tool for personal gain. Universities and employers are now changing their approach. Many institutions are replacing the checkbox system with strict Step 2 verification policies. Applicants are now required to provide verifiable documentation, such as Indian status cards, Maine Nation citizenship, or Inuit enrollment documents, to access Indigenous-specific opportunities. However, these requirements are complicated by history. Through residential schools and the 60s, the state intentionally severed Indigenous families from their communities and records. Institutions are trying to find a middle ground, building policies that stop intentional fraud without excluding Indigenous people who are in the process of reconnecting with their heritage. State-issued ID is only part of the solution. Bureaucratic fixes cannot fully address an identity crisis originally created by colonial policy. The solution lies in community relationality. True Indigenous identity is defined by the ongoing, recognized relationships a person has with a living Indigenous nation. This is a matter of Indigenous sovereignty. Only legitimate Indigenous nations have the right to determine their own membership and who belongs to their community. Universities and corporations are beginning to step back from defining indigeneity themselves, instead supporting the administrative processes of Indigenous-led verification. The systems that once allowed identity fraud are closing. To implement sovereign, trauma-informed verification policies, contact bearstandingtall.com for expert guidance on navigating this transition.